I'm gonna sit. I'm mic'd up, and I'm gonna. Oh, I'm just gonna read my remarks. So this is the biggest one.
Good morning. Good morning. I think we're just ready to get started. Good morning. My name is Anish Katari. I'm the VP of Marketing for Sistel Inc. We design and manufacture rugged, custom, and COTS computer systems for mission-critical defense applications around the globe. We're based out of Houston, Texas, with 30 years' experience. And we wanted to thank the Navy League, and we're very excited to have the opportunity to sponsor today's panel discussion on unmanned autonomous systems. And we're very proud to support a wide variety of unmanned programs with our rugged hardware, including the Predator, Reaper, ACUS, and now Fire Scout. Today's panel discussion centers on unmanned autonomous systems and how next-gen capabilities will integrate into the future of distributed maritime operations. This will inevitably entail the ability to distribute mission-critical data throughout a dense area of operations, especially in crowded littoral waters, and will require enhancement of command, control, and communications capabilities for integrated deployment of numerous unmanned autonomous systems. We have a highly distinguished and decorated group of panelists for today's discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Rear Admiral John P. Nagley, U.S. Navy, Program Executive Officer, Unmanned and Small Combatants. Thank you very much, and enjoy the discussion.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Well, good morning. You know, you can tell by the size of the room how important a topic this is. You know, we're very excited today to talk to you about, the great work that's going on across the spectrum in unmanned and autonomous systems. Unmanned and autonomous systems have great potential to fundamentally shift the way the Department of Navy conducts naval operations. Across all domains, from seabed to space, employment of unmanned systems and technologies will transform modern warfare, increasing the agility and lethality of the fleet, speeding up our tactical decision-making, and providing us opportunities to leverage new technologies more quickly, giving the warfighter the tactical and strategic advantage to win the fight. Today, we are fortunate to have a great panel that is doing tremendous work across all the domains in the unmanned world. We have Rear Admiral Mark Dara, Program Executive Officer for Unmanned Aviation Strike Weapons. Rear Admiral Dave Hahn, Chief of Naval Research, Director of Innovation, Technology Requirements, Test and Evaluation. Brigadier General Christian Wortman, Vice Chief of Naval Research Commander, Marine Group's Warfighting Lab, Office of Naval Research, and Rear Admiral Mike Ryan, United States Coast Guard Assistant Commandant Capability. We'll offer panel members to kind of give a brief introduction, and then we're looking forward to dialogue with you if you have questions on this kind of exciting new frontier that we're operating under. So without further ado, Admiral Darrell.
All right, John, thanks. Good morning. For those of you that don't understand what the portfolio that I have responsibility for, I'll just do a real quick overview. I have responsibility on the unmanned aviation side for all the Group 1 through Group 5 systems that the naval forces are using, as well as we support the COCOMs and other services with. Group 1, very small systems like Puma and WASP. These are being used by the Marine Corps and our Special Warfare forces in theater to provide at the company level and battalion level information that they require to execute their mission set. We moved there from very small things into many of you are familiar with the Scan Eagle and Blackjack systems, or Group 3 systems. The Scan Eagle predominantly works in the land environment, and our Blackjack, supporting the MU forces, is operating in the maritime environment. Great conversation we had earlier about the challenges in sensor technologies, common trucks but different sensors going between land and maritime environments, very different challenges that we have there. So we're continually working on trying to get the package sets for those different systems as common as we could possibly make them. Then we move into Group 4 systems like Fire Scout Bravo, and Charlie. This is one of our very first systems where we've had manned and unmanned teaming in the fleet. The H-60 Romeo and a Fire Scout Bravo operating off an LCS. Very cutting-edge work being done by our sailors and pilots that are flying these systems, understanding the things that we need to be considering when we continue to update these capabilities in the manned-unmanned arena. Then we move into the very large systems like Triton, Group 5. Triton is going to replace the EP-3 eventually with a multi-intelligence capability. Extremely capable system that is going to operate in theater and provide a huge amount of information. And one of the big advents that we see with that system is the ability for the on-site commander to task real-time as well as gather information directly from the system. Today, Global Hawk and other systems like BAMs, they go up, they capture the environment, and then they land and it's downloaded. With Triton, we're going to be able to provide real-time, near real-time information directly to the commander at sea. And then finally, MQ-25 is going to be our carrier-integrated unmanned system that we expect to finish up our source selection activity this summer and award a contract for the engineering and manufacturing development program. That system is CNO's first Maritime Accelerated Capabilities Office program, MACO. It is a highly accelerated program that's going to allow us to get it to the fleet much faster. I don't know if my slides are up there. If you could put the first slide. I would just very briefly, about 4 or 5 minutes here, talk a little bit about the discussion about autonomy, autonomous systems. I have responsibility for weapons, and one of our first weapons with autonomous capability, that's actually the first brief. If you could continue to go to my brief, that'd be great. The autonomous systems that we have today are what we would call directive autonomy, where we go into mission planning and we tell the system exactly where it should go, what parameters it should operate within, and we don't allow it to make decisions outside those boundaries. And those are all dictated through mission planning. One of the areas that I'm concerned about, and I challenge my team with every day, is that when we start talking about moving beyond the current directive autonomy that we put into our systems, when we start seeing stochastic type behaviors that you would get with machine learning, how are we going to program that in through mission planning? We tend to focus very heavily on the machine itself and its decision making and so on, but we have to set the parameters for what it will base its decisions on. So a lot of work that needs to be done there. Another area of concern that I've been addressing with my team is this idea of are we doing the analysis to determine where autonomy and autonomous behaviors make the most sense in the kill chain. Right now we have a lot of legacy systems that have been optimized to operate a certain way. We put autonomy in there It could be like having a Lamborghini and only being allowed to drive 20 miles an hour. It can make very, very fast decisions, but if it's reliant and interfaced with a legacy system that can't make the movements on those quick decisions, then we haven't benefited our kill chains. So we need to do a little bit more work in trying to generate the analysis necessary to figure out where would we best insert that autonomous behavior into an unmanned system. And then in the last couple minutes I have here, just very quickly, we are focused in all domains in my PEO. I have responsibility for the Common Control System, which is a system that will control all unmanned systems in every domain. Underwater, on the water, in the air, in space, no matter where a naval unmanned system operates, the CCS is what you'll hear it referred to as, is going to be the controller that's common between all those activities. The last thing we want is to have 16 different controllers in a KAOC to control 16 different platforms. And so we've received that guidance to build that common system, and we're making great headway. Admiral Nagley and I have worked together on LDUUV and used it to provide that command and control that's necessary for an unmanned underwater system. And then just to close out, I will tell you, when I arrived, we had a $850 million multi-award contract for ISR services in theater. It was a 5-year contract. Within 3 years, we were at ceiling, and we recompeted it. We just awarded a $1.7 billion MAC for the services in theater. We cannot keep up with the demand, and we're actually using a lot of company-owned, company-operated, government-owned, company-operated capability in theater to address the COCOM requirements for ISR services. So I'll just go ahead and stop there, and I look forward to your questions. And Christian.
Great. Good morning. Brigadier General Christian Wortman. I'm the Commanding General for the Marine Corps' Warfighting Lab and the Vice Chief of Naval Research. First, want to thank the Navy League and industry partners for organizing, sponsoring, and hosting. Really appreciate the opportunity to engage with you and have a conversation with you about where we're going, future force development inside of the Marine Corps. I want to spend just a couple of minutes on the Warfighting Labs portfolio. The long and the short of our responsibility is we are responsible for the concepts and the technology for the Marine Corps to fight and win in a future environment. So that starts for us with concept development and how we think based off of emerging technology. We're going to restructure our operations, and we link that very closely with the S&T portfolio, which is why our partnership with the Office of Naval Research and the Chief of Naval Research is so critically important to the work that we do. We also cover down on the services live force experimentation, wargaming, and rapid prototyping efforts, and we put it together kind of a one-stop shop in Quantico for future force capability development. I want to talk just a little bit about the homework that the Secretary of Defense and the Commandant of the Marine Corps gave us. So first, from the Secretary of Defense, he's looking for a more lethal, more survivable force in contested environments. And he told us that we need to reform our processes so that we're faster, we're more effective, we're more responsive. We're really taking that at the Warfighting Lab as being specified tasks to our organization, and we exist to support those imperatives. A more lethal, more survivable force, and better processes so that we can get to future capabilities more quickly. I want to talk a little bit about the Commandant's homework for us. He gave it to us in the Marine operating concept, and he really gave us 5 critical tasks. First among those 5 tasks is to integrate the naval services. Spend a little bit more time on that later, but want to just very quickly touch on the other 4. The other 4 are to evolve MAGTF capabilities, enhance our ability to maneuver, to operate effectively in a contested network environment where we anticipate that our command and control networks are going to be under a lot of pressure, and then finally to maximize and exploit the capabilities of our individual Marines. I mentioned that first among equals is the imperative to integrate the naval services. Last year, the Commandant and the Chief of Naval Operations co-signed a document called Littoral Operations in a Contested Environment. And the key takeaway for us at the Warfighting Lab is it's a framework for Navy and Marine Corps innovation for applying Marine Corps capabilities in support of the Navy's lead in sea control. So we're still all about the business of forward deployed, forward engaged crisis response, forcible entry, but this new imperative from the Commandant and the Chief of Naval Operations, how we apply MAGTF capabilities in support of the Navy's lead for sea control operations. Some other concepts that we think are important to us is really the Navy's distributed maritime operations, and then the Marine Corps' Expeditionary Advanced-Based Operations. And if I could kind of rebrand Expeditionary Advanced-Based Operations, I would say it's Distributed Maritime Operations Expeditionary. Because what we're looking to do from land-based locations and when we're operating at sea with our Navy brothers and sisters is to extend the reach of the fleet with our Marine Corps operating forces, our Marine Corps formations. So that naval integration imperative is driving just a tremendous amount of our focus and a tremendous amount of the work that we're doing. There was a slide up. It showed a lot of our current and legacy unmanned and autonomous systems. The long and the short of what we're doing is we are looking across all domains for systems that will enable us to better sense, strike, and support our operations. And I'll just echo the comments that we're looking for it to come together on a common controller or a common user interface. I'm not interested in having Marine rifle squads and rifle platoons heads down in a handful of different controllers, and common sensor fusion so that we're able to provide a single picture to our sailors and Marines in and around the objective area where high levels of situational awareness are just an absolute imperative. Looking forward to the questions, looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much for your time.
Over me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Ryan, and I'm the Assistant Commandant for Capability. And in our Coast Guard vernacular, what that really means is I get the great fortune that I am able to express operational requirements both into our acquisition domain as well into our R&D center operations and into their project streams that really will help to shape where is the Coast Guard going in this exciting environment. So with that as the lens, I will tell you that our mission set, our area of operations really are ripe for leveraging this type of capability and technology. We're operating domestically and beyond, really into the global environment, and it really presents some unique challenge spaces for us, but also gives us a great deal of opportunity. When we think about, our missions that we're either statutorily required to perform or that, we've evolved over the centuries that we've been in existence, that spans everything from counter-drug operations to an aids to navigation mission set when some of our harbor and harbor approach environments. You can think of applicability of this type of technology into domestic ice-breaking operations or even polar regions. Search and rescue, another environment and opportunity where when we think about applicability of using unmanned capabilities, and whether that's in the aerial domain, on the surface, or maybe even in a subsurface environment, we've got a lot of great potential on the horizon for us. Similarly, when we think about our mission support activities, we can apply this type of functionality into simple things like conducting facility inspections, performing annual reviews of some of our aids to navigation towers that may be remotely located and not easily accessible from the surface environment. And likewise, into the training arena as well. We're able to apply or envision employing unmanned capability really to make a better training experience for our operators. So the charge that I have right now is to figure out what does that future look like. And I would tell you that we're trying to leverage a lot of the lessons learned. This obviously isn't new technology. It's not new capability. It's been utilized in many of these environments for decades in some instances. I will say, the Coast Guard is probably late to the table in some regards on how are we really adapting and implementing and institutionalizing this type of functionality. We're working diligently to try to close some of those gaps. We recognize that this is a force multiplier. And in a lean service like ours, that's important. The resource base is not unlimited. Even with some of the recent appropriation successes we've had, we always need to be mindful about how we're applying different funds, capabilities, and labor in order to maximize our mission effectiveness. So we're working through some of those things. I mentioned the robust mission environment that we have. We likewise are very fortunate to have a very innovative operational community. We have operators that they have a thirst and a desire really to take advantage of this type of functionality, employ it to max effect, and get better returns on investment than what they're able to achieve with some of our in-service functions and our classical capabilities and assets that we have at their disposal today. So from that standpoint, you know, I've got two legs that are extremely enthusiastic, mindful of you know, what we're able to apply from a day-to-day perspective. And I think for organizationally, we're also mindful that the mantra of the Coast Guard is to leverage all of the relationships, the partnerships, and the power of those that we're able to connect with. That's many of you in the audience. It's some of my colleagues on the panel today and the environments that they're able to really bring to bear. So we want to try to tap into all of that type of exposure and experience and really take the Coast Guard to the next level of capability. We've ultimately, when you look at what's our distinct goal, we're trying in many instances to increase our domain awareness. We're trying to reduce our risk posture. We're trying to complement the capabilities that we have at our disposal. And we're really trying to achieve max effect, not only for our service, but for the maritime public and for those that we're entrusted to protect and serve throughout the globe. One of the things that I have on my docket for this calendar year is really to build out a coherent vision in this environment. You know, we've had a lot of disparate and disconnected initiatives that have been in play for a number of years. We've got a lot of great success stories that I'll be happy to share as we get into some of the Q&A portions of this morning's forum. But I don't have an overarching vision right now that I can plop down on the table and help industry understand what some of my challenges are, what my direction might be. And I think the Navy did a very nice job recently back in January when they published their Unmanned Systems Goals document. You know, that's the type of overarching umbrella that I think the Coast Guard can leverage. It mimics many of the challenges that I see today, not only within our service capability, but when I think about our role in engaging with the maritime industry, which has a similar appetite and thirst to employ autonomous capability, unmanned technology, really to help their economic engine and some of their mission objectives. I need to be smart about how they're employing some of that type of functionality so that as we're engaging at the International Maritime Organization and we're thinking about how does today's capacities and capabilities really overlay into some of the existing conventions and instruments that help to drive the way the maritime community operates throughout the globe, and whether that's in safety of life at sea activities or in some of our manning requirements. You know, the Coast Guard's got a pretty unique role in that environment as well. So one, we need to be mindful of what technology can offer, how does that overlay into the current landscape, and then really put it to maximum effect as well. So I look forward to the opportunity to address some of your questions, and I'll try to weave in some more specifics about initiatives that we have going on as we progress this morning. So thank you.
Okay, good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning. All right. It's great to play cleanup and be up here with these gentlemen as we talk about something that's pretty near and dear to the job jar that I get the opportunity to supervise. So as the Chief of Naval Research, I have one job, and the mission of the organization is to plan, foster, and encourage scientific research to create future naval power because of its paramount importance to national security. So I didn't make those words up. Those are the words in the public law that created the organization back in 1946. So many decades later, 7 decades later, I am encouraged by the fact that CNO, Chief of Naval Operations, uses that exact phrase when he describes what we need to do with our Navy and Marine Corps team. Future naval power, right? We need to generate naval power. So from my perch, as I sit and look at how do we do that, through the lens of unmanned and autonomous, I look at the world like this. Could you pull up that slide, please? I think I got one that I want to show you. There you go. That's it. Does anybody recognize this? Yeah, that's the Masters, just completed over the weekend, and that guy you see there, Patrick Reed, wins the Masters, right? First major. Pretty unexpected. You look at that leaderboard and you see a pretty competitive space. And my analogy to future naval power and to this, through this unmanned and autonomous lens, kind of goes like this when you think of it in terms of the Masters and the game of golf. That operator is given a set of tools to go and operate with. He or she is in competition with not just themselves, but with an environment and with an adversary that they need to beat in a competitive space, not over the course of a minute or an hour, but over the course of days. And for them to be able to do that, it takes practice, it takes focus, and it takes enough reps and sets at an expert level to be able to produce an expert result in a highly competitive field. So your Navy and Marine Corps, when they go and deploy this naval power, they walk onto the playing field with everything that they're going to be able to use. And they have to make some pretty critical choices about what to put in their bag. Just like that player needs to think about, Patrick Reed needs to think about, which 14 clubs am I going to put in my bag and carry with me? I don't have a choice as to which of those 14 clubs is not useful to me after I start, because I carry with me the tools that I can use for the rest of this engagement, just like your Navy and Marine Corps. So today, as we look at the tools provided, most of those legacy tools require a lot of human interaction. Do we think that the unmanned tool set that we can provide our Navy and Marine Corps today is ready to go in the bag? Do we think that we're going to get an expert result, right? An expert result means we're on top of that leaderboard by completing the job. Not just a better drive, not just a better putt, but completing it all the way across that kill chain. I got to drive the ball well. I got to make an approach shot well. I got to put it on the green in regulation or better, and then I can't three-putt my way to score, because the score is all that matters in this game. Just like in our competition, what we bring and what we expect our operators to be able to use, the only thing that matters is the end result. It's not interesting if it was enjoyable as we did it. It's compelling when we win. So in our drive to create future naval power, as we think about the unmanned space, my question to you really is, and I know you're supposed to ask me questions, but I'm asking you one. Are we ready to put that as one of the 14 clubs in the bag? Have we provided for the operator the same grip on this new club that they've got on the ones that are already in the bag, so they know how to use it? Or are we going to provide him a left-handed club when he's a right-handed player? That's not going to be useful. Are we going to ask him to alter their swing mechanics in a way that it's not going to be effective for him? So that tool will sit in the bag and never be used, right? That's not a useful thing for us to trade out on our ships or in our expeditionary forces to provide to our operators. So where are we on that? I'll leave that question with you and you can think about it. There are two items of evidence that I'll bring to your attention that over the course of the last year or currently we are exploring to create future naval power to get at all the things that these gentlemen have indicated are challenges, but we must do. So we've deployed a large UUV out to the Western Pacific Theater to see just how difficult and how many people it takes and what the logistic train looks like to be able to get a large UUV in theater to do a job. And I will tell you, it's tremendous. Not a simple task, and there's some discovery along the way about moving these things that are on the cutting edge of technology for doing a job that today I could do with a manned platform or a manned set of tools. Things that you wouldn't think about until you go do it. Can I take lithium-ion batteries on a plane? Can I airlift them? If I do, what's the condition they have to be in? And how have I solved that problem or just complicated the whole discussion about what's in the bag or should I put it in the bag? The second thing that we've put in evidence and we're currently working through is the Sea Hunter platform, or MDUSV, you might hear it called. And we're in the process of bringing that into fleet operations, because only if we can get that club in the bag with the operators who need to use it are they going to be given the chance to figure out how it integrates into the naval power calculus that a strike group thinks through and gathers and gets reps and sets on so that when they get on the field, they do well and they score. So we're taking MDUSV and we're integrating it into the fleet out on the West Coast. And we're going through that exercise right now. And there's a lot of discovery about how do you use it? What do you do with it when you got it? What are its limitations? Is that the right thing to use in the short rough when you find yourself in trouble? So until we can give all our operators that experience set, we're not going to discover the things that we need to get to the end point, which is being on top of that leaderboard, because that's where we want to be with this set of things. And I think there is a place in the bag to trade out one of those 14 clubs I'm carrying today and start putting unmanned things in there in a more robust manner. But it's up to us to get it out there in a way that they can start using it. They can prove to themselves it's worthwhile, and they're willing to carry it, and it's worth the load. So I look forward to your questions, and thank you.
Could we go to the first slide there real quick, my slides? I'll just talk to it. So I'm the moderator for today's panel, and if I was here a year ago, you would have saw my title, Program Executive Officer for Littoral Combat Ships. Today, I'm Program Executive Officer for Unmanned and Small Combatants, and it really is there to reflect both the breadth and scope of the work we're doing every day. And what we've seen is an expansion of that unmanned space and that unmanned work in the portfolio that's grown substantially, and it's been now more integrated with small combatant force. So there's some organizing principles. It's not just about the breadth and scope of the portfolio, but it's how we acquire those systems. So this is about getting that capability out there with speed and scale, using every tool we have in the acquisition arsenal to try to accelerate this capability to the fleet. So we have a couple of organizing principles in the PO that we're kind of going after that. We've developed these family of systems for UUVs and USVs, and really the purpose of laying out those family of systems is to align stakeholders to kind of go quickly. So it's stakeholders both on the requirement side, on the end user side, on the test side, becomes critical for us to kind of flatten the organization, get the requirements right early, and then move out. Probably the most powerful part of that, Admiral Hahn talked about, is getting the capability out to the user quickly and learning as part of the development and test schedule. So if you look across the series of systems we're deploying, we're procuring across UUVs and USVs, the underlying principle there is to kind of get it out quickly to the fleet, learn quickly, and so you can kind of focus your efforts and get the capability out they need. There are some key enabling technologies for us that also this kind of family allows us to align against. So things like endurance, autonomy, precision navigation, command and control, payload. And now we can smartly put our investments against those technologies across the family to accelerate the capability as fast as we can. Those are our organizing principles in the PEO on the unmanned side. I look forward to addressing any questions you have on any particular programs, but it is an exciting time, across this domain, and we're anxious here to take some questions. So I'll open it up to the floor. Sir.
Admiral?
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for this panel. This is definitely a capability that will expand the reach of our fleet and will address these challenges we're facing in the future. My question is, I would like to pose perhaps to you and Admiral Dunn, this whole concept of a common control system. Commonality is great. I think it's a human dynamic. Everyone agrees that it's great as long as everyone else adjusts to match mine, my systems and my protocols. So it is hard to move that, I'm sure, in a large organization. So I guess my question would be, for example, in the common control system, but you could expand it further. How are the systems commands able to work together? What policies, what dynamics are you driving to get the systems commands to work together so that you can deliver a common control station, common look and feel, common for the user, for each one of these different systems, unmanned, surface systems, aviation, undersea, et cetera. So in fact, Admiral Chelby, I guess, POC4I would also kind of belong in this conversation. So if you could maybe read his mind and bring that into the conversation as well.
No, great question. Mark.
Yeah, so I don't have to read Admiral Cheby's mind because I talk to him often about this. It's very important for us all to kind of set the foundation of what this is all based on. It isn't based on a common standard. It's about tying together all the standards to allow the system to operate depending on what system it's going to be interfaced with. So for those in the audience that are very familiar with unmanned, you're very familiar with the UCS standard that's been out there. The Army and the Navy have adopted primarily the UCS standard as its means for controlling the unmanned domain. And then on the other side of the coin, the Air Force is focused more on OMS and UCI as their message sets. You need to think of those as kind of the OS of the system. Inside of each one of those message realms are basically applications or services. So as an example, if I want MQ-25 to be a tanker, I have to write a service for removing the basket from the package it's in and set it back so that we can take fuel. That service is something we would write inside of the message sets that we have. Inside of CCS, we have OMS, UCI, and we also have UCS. And those are bridged together with algorithms that would allow each of those message sets to properly coordinate with whatever unmanned system it's controlling, whether it's under the water, it's in the air, or on top of the water. The thing that's also important is that in CCS, we're not just doing vehicle control, we're doing mission management as well as mission planning. So all those things together allow us to operate across multiple systems very quickly. And so it's a bit of a daunting task, but we are already showing that we're able to provide surrogate control of multiple systems that are operating under UCS and OMS UCI control. So very encouraged with where we are right now. We did a demo with Admiral Nagley's LDUUV up in Keyport. We provided the mission planning and the vehicle control elements and proved that we could control something that had a completely different standard. We just understood the interface and we understood the service that it required. I hope that answers your question.
And I would just offer, if you want to get the full operational capability of unmanned systems, you have to drive to this agile network kind of force. So you have to put the hooks in to be able to kind of do that. You can operate these things, through a network or standalone to really get the full benefit of having an unmanned force.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Megan Eckstein, USNI News. I thought Admiral Hahn's comments about the logistics were very interesting. I was wondering if there's any other examples you guys can give about logistics or training and education or operations planners where maybe you need them to start evolving how they look at their jobs now, and then also how they can give you feedback that maybe affect how you procure autonomous systems.
I'll be happy to jump on that one. So the short answer is, I don't think we can view this whole part of the tool set as unique or different. It's just another club. And if we get the team out on the practice range, on the driving range, and we can get them to exercise these things enough, we're going to figure out that the more we can turn this into a tool that they're comfortable using, and turn it into something they know, the more utility it will have. So I don't think there's an angle here where we need to go set up a special set of thinking or a set of disciplines that only deal with unmanned stuff. This is about that competition in an arena that we understand very well. We know the field. We know what works and doesn't work in that environment, and now we're just bringing a club in that's got a graphite shaft and a lightweight head, and boy, it's really powerful if we can use it properly. But if the team doesn't understand how to use it, then it'll just sit in the bag. So So the more we can get the team with these clubs on the driving range, the more comfortable they'll be. They'll understand how to use them, and I don't think any of us are smart enough to create the concept of operations or the tactics, techniques, and procedures, because that we're going to learn by doing. And so again, the more we can turn it into something that they know, get them practice with it, get them out there, have them figure out how they're going to integrate it into their concept of naval power and how that's got to change with the environment, be it the adversary or the weather or the sea state or the job jar, then the better off we're going to be. So we're off working that across all of our teams and with the fleet, which is the real important factor in this one. And I think you'll just see more and more of it out there. So I hope that answers your question or doesn't leave you short.
Dave, if I could, and I want to have General Wortman comment on this too, if you could, Christian. So one of the things that we have seen, I will say, and I completely agree with Admiral Hahn on this, but there is an aviation culture that we've had to manage where we had early on people trying to apply the 3710 NATOPS approach. Who's going to fly these things? Do they have to be aeromedically qualified to fly a drone? So on and so forth. And I know we have Lance Corporals in the field with iPads and so on that are flying these things in the airspace. And so there have been some adjustments to how we think about what's required for training and so on and so forth. I know the Marine Corps is putting out their own instruction on how we do that. I know that the Navy has done this as well. The Air Boss has signed out basically a document that outlines how are we going to do this unmanned business when we have so many systems that are out there, and we're going to ask what we call air vehicle operators at a console to fly a system that may be just point and click as opposed to stick and throttle kind of thing. So it's forcing us to think about things a little bit differently. It's not cheating. I agree, as Admiral Hahn said, we've got to get it out there and find these things out, and we are. And that's the exciting part of introducing a new capability. And I don't know, Christian, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll pick up on it for just a moment. So at the Warfighting Lab, we benefit from having inside of the same house our science and technology portfolio, our live force experimentation portfolio, and our concept development portfolio. And all of those things interact with one another, and they're all informed by one another. So you're kind of always in this iterative loop where we're learning across the entire organization. But really important that we're learning with our operating forces. Mm-hmm. So just a couple of examples of how we're doing that learning. During the course of 2017, we focused our live force experimentation efforts on our infantry battalions. And we put a lot of unmanned air systems in the hands of the Marines at various echelons inside of that organization. We worked with them to develop what we thought some of the techniques and procedures were going to be for employing them, but the Marines really taught us after they had the opportunity to play with the tool to get the club out on the course for the course of the year that we were focused on that infantry battalion. This year we're focused on logistics, and a significant portion of logistics and sustainment is distribution. So whatever the supplies are that required delivery across whatever the posture is, how are you going to distribute it to meet the needs of your units that are out there kind of at the tactical edge? So we're using unmanned air systems and unmanned ground vehicles to support our distribution requirements. And again, we're learning from the players that are out on the course, telling us which clubs are working for them and which ones are those left-handed clubs for the right-hand golfer that Admiral Hahn was talking about. So very important for us to maintain that strong connection to the operating forces and get a better sense for what's working and what's not working. In terms of the logistics considerations, really important things that we're discovering is power generation, power storage, power management. There's some new imperatives for how we work through all of those challenges in an operational environment. So those are important focus areas for us. And then the training and certification of the users, because there are some legacy regulations and legacy practices that make a lot of sense in this kind of environment. But if you're talking about employing a Group 1 UAS at the rifle squad level, 13 of our Marines, do they need to have sort of the full training and certification process for our manned aviation platforms. You know, you just got to kind of wring that stuff out and make sure that it makes sense for a given application. But we're learning in stride. We're better because of the connection that we maintain with our operating forces.
Good morning. Glenn Wright, GMA Tech in Annapolis, Maryland. And there's a diversity of autonomous platforms represented on the stage there. But something that's not been addressed so far is autonomous shipping. And I'd like to address this to the U.S. Coast Guard. The U.S. seems to be lagging in areas of autonomous shipping, especially to Northern Europe. And I'd like to ask where the Coast Guard perceives the U.S. in this technology in terms of new sensor suites required to operate these for command and control, and also for adoption of policies and such as IMO to support autonomous shipping.
Great, thanks for that question. And you're right, I think globally we're seeing the maritime industry moving energetically into this space. I think they're still trying to define what are those boundary conditions. Ultimately, we never want to sacrifice safety or security. And from a U.S. perspective, I think the Coast Guard, as our representative into the International Maritime Organization, was successful recently in defining a scoping project in concert with governments across the globe to really help explore how do these new technologies and capabilities overlay into today's physical world? What are some of those risk conditions? I mean, one of the worst outcomes that I think any of us could envision would be to have an unmanned cargo ship arriving on the port doorstep and have a maritime accident with untold consequences. And so we all want to be protective of, preserving decision space, making sure that we're complying with current regulations, but doing that wisely so that industry has an opportunity to employ technology that makes economic sense, that helps to continue to fuel the $4.6 trillion maritime commerce that arrives annually on the U.S. marketplace. So we want to make sure that we're moving in a positive direction there. The Coast Guard is an integral part of that conversation. We want to make sure that we're mindful of what technologies are being employed without sacrificing some of the risk margins that we currently have. So, and likewise, from a Coast Guard perspective, do we have our personnel trained to understand how those systems work within an integrated bridge navigation system into more autonomous vessel control systems, and really where are some of those risks and vulnerabilities as well. So we're working on those things. We're having that conversation at the highest levels of international engagement, and we'll make sure that, likewise, those conversations are taking place at the U.S. port level, because we've got a lot of stellar individuals that are all committed to the same outcomes.
Thank you.
Good morning, Robbie Harris, a former naval person. First, an observation and then a compliment. I think it was the same panel last year or the year before in which every panel member was an aviator. So congratulations to Navy League and not doing that again this year. Next is a question which I would ask the three Navy admirals to comment on. It seems too often the metric that is used to measure Navy capability is the number of hulls in the Navy, be it 355, 326, 303, you name it. The capability is measured by the number of hulls. My question to the three Navy admirals is, what is the right metric to be used to measure Navy capability?
That's a great question. And the answer is naval power. So the CNO has made it very clear that the number of ships, the capacity, the number of aircraft, the capacity, the number of submarines, the capacity is important, but it's not the only measure. You must factor in the capability and the network ability, if you will, of all of those platforms in a multi-domain joint environment, and then you arrive at naval power. So we're on a quest, all of us, a forced march to not just grow the capacity, because it will grow at the speed at which we as a nation can grow it, that the budget space will allow, but we're on a quest to create naval power. So more capability infused into those platforms and better networked in a way that they can be distributed as the team that needs to work it, the fleet, feels like they can distribute it. They must do it. They must integrate it with the Marine Corps team so that that naval power is measured in terms of that whole team in that fight, and all those tools being used as the local commanders see fit. So it's not going to be predetermined by the number of ships that we write in a document here inside the Beltway. It's going to be determined by them, and it's measured by naval power. And I don't know if Mark or John, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, so Admiral Hahn's right on, and what I would tell you is it's not just a number. It's about creating effects, and the ability to generate effects when required is what the measure is, and that's a combination of a multitude of things. The number of ships doesn't matter, it's the mix of those ships. What's the capability of each of those individual crews, their systems on board, how they're linked together, how the talent of our team. And I think you may have heard Ciano talking, I know Admiral Hahn's already touched on it. We get focused, we're not focused on a number. We're focused on capability, networking the legacy systems in with the new systems, training our sailors and Marines to make sure that they're at the peak of their capability to deliver effects, and then ensure that we're ready all the time to employ that. And Admiral Hahn said it well. I mean, we've got to go practice, we've got to be able to go, and when it's time to perform and generate effects, which is putting the ball in the hole, we have to be able to do so. And I believe that our focus has been distributed across multiple vectors, across multiple domains to deliver effects. And so I would argue with you that we're not focused on a number. We're focused on a force that can deliver effects.
I would just offer it's also about the speed you deliver that capability. And that's the work that we got to really get better at. We got to be able to adapt to new technology faster, get it out in the fleet faster, whether it's on an unmanned platform or a manned platform, just to stay ahead of that technology curve. It's a race. It's a competition. And we got to win that competition. You win that by being there first. So we spend a bulk of our time on how do we accelerate getting capability out to the fleet. How do we make sure we understand what's out there in the realm of possibility that can turn into capability very, very quickly, and develops kind of new ConOps and new operational methods to employ that capability. But it's about speed to fleet for us. It's using every acquisition authority that we have on the acquisition side to deliver that capability as fast as possible.
Thank you for a very clear answer.
Yeah, I want to put a little finer point on a piece of that. The advantage that you get from the forces that come inside the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard that can be employed by a combatant commander is the fact that just like Patrick Reed has to play with what he's got, we've got maneuver that are associated with our forces. So the National Defense Strategy that Secretary Mattis articulated puts an emphasis on maneuver. And that's inherent to all the naval forces that we can generate and are employed by the combatant commanders. And if we can enhance that maneuver by either capacity or capability, then we enhance what that combatant commander can bring to bear to deter some of these things that someone else, a potential adversary, might be thinking about. And so that's why we can't just think about doing it and keep it at home. We got to go have that stuff present and in that away space all the time in a way that they understand that it is effective. We can put the ball in the hole. We are ready, and we're ready to play that game.
Thank you.
Good morning. Nick Zazulia, Avionics. You guys talked a bit about having a consistent system for operators and user interface. To kind of throw a wrench in that, I'm curious if you could talk about industry's role and commercial and how, what role that plays and how you want to use those innovations that happen in that space. and those things obviously might not necessarily conform to exactly the things you're trying to do, but you still want to make use of the advancements, and similarly, just in general, how best you can leverage the work that's being done there and the large amount of resources being invested.
Yeah, I might go ahead and hop on that. So our existing model is we take advantage of something that's known as advanced naval technology exercise. And we really do it in partnership with the Naval Research and Development Enterprise and industry. So in 2017, we did one of these advanced naval technology exercises, or ANTEXs, and we focused on ship-to-shore maneuver. And rather than taking to industry and the research and development establishment our idea on how we thought we needed to develop capability, we gave them a problem and asked them to bring relevant capabilities to us to examine how we might apply those to solve that problem. In 2018, we did the same thing and just completed it in March in Camp Pendleton, and we focused on operating in an urban environment, really focused on ground combat, kind of the close fight in an urban environment and its unique challenges. And we're setting ourselves up for 2019, where we're going to focus on fleet and Marine Expeditionary Force integration and kind of the challenges and the opportunities that exist with the commercial sector and the research and development establishment to strengthen those connections, strengthen those linkages. And to the previous question, how do we structure technology and our command and control systems so that we're able to gain leverage off of one another, or we're able to amplify or magnify the capabilities across the naval services? So, a series of events, all of them designed to pull in the research and development establishment and to pull in industry. And by pulling in industry, we're looking for industry to challenge us with technologies that they've developed or technologies that are available, and force us to reconceptualize how we might conduct or structure our operations. So we think it's a huge learning advantage. We think that there's an asymmetric advantage by working across those two critical capabilities with research and development establishment and industry, and we're working actively to make sure that we're fully incorporating it.
And if I could just add, so I mentioned the capability gap that the Coast Guard currently has. The way I'm filling that gap really is trying to acquire and apply technology that's in the marketplace today. So I'm really relying upon industry bringing the functionality that I then can institutionalize and apply to my current mission set. I'm not looking for new and exciting, innovative technology necessarily today. I need functionality that will operate well in the maritime domain. And then I'm trying to figure out how can I apply those systems into our environment and get the information sets, that imagery, that surveillance, and put that back in the hands of my decision makers and my operational team so that they can get the right outcomes. So, we're going through a project right now, putting commercially available quadcopter style man-portable capability in the hands of non-aviator members of the Coast Guard, operating off of maybe a 45-foot boat or whatever their organic operating area might be, and asking them to figure out how can you apply this, getting the information, the imagery, and the data back so that they can really leverage that in expanding their surveillance environment. So I'm not looking for creative new ways, but I do need some help trying to understand how can I apply what's out in the marketplace today onto some of our problem sets.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Tom Risen with Harris Space America. I have a question about air-to-air sense and avoid radar for unmanned aircraft. During the development of the Triton, there were some problems with air-to-air sense and avoid. And I was wondering, now that they're going to be deployed to Guam, what have you learned about how to improve that and apply that to future drone projects?
Problems. We didn't have any problems. We had a decision that we made regarding the system we had and the need for the sense and avoid, is what we call it, capability. There's also a due regard requirement when we operate the system in international airspace. And so what we've done is we've actually got a radar that we've incorporated now. The big challenge we have, and I think this is something for everybody to think through, is that the difference between sense and avoid for a small Puma, Wasp kind of thing versus a 80-foot wingspan flying at a very, very high altitude, sense and avoid requirements are completely different animals. MQ-25 is going to be a more tactical type platform that's going to require different sense and avoid. What we found early on with Triton was the system we were putting on wasn't optimized for how it was going to operate. And so what we did is we used a small business innovative research approach, and we've gotten a system that we brought on board, and it will provide us with the basics we require. Now that's going to be out in the future, and the way we will operate in theater is the way we operate today, and that is any system that's not able to provide its own sense and avoid capability has to have basically flight following, or a radar on the ground that's able to provide that flight clearance, flight following capability. And so that's the way we will operate for some time. It's the way we operate today with many other systems, manned and unmanned. And so we believe we have the right solution for right now. But I will tell you, I'm going to turn your question around. We've got to do some work on our application of the algorithms and the processing based on the class of system that we're going to require sense and avoid for. Same thing for the underwater systems. The sense and avoid capability for underwater and on the surface of the water systems is going to be completely different as well. The processing, the way they have to sense the environment. Think the difference between operating at 10 knots versus 400 knots and the closure distances that you have to manage to be able to do the avoid part after sensing. So some big challenges ahead of us, but right now we believe we have a solution set that's going to get us where we need to be.
Good morning, gentlemen. Captain Shelby Ox. I'm currently a student at EWS, Expeditionary Warfare School. My question is for the entire panel about unmanned technology proliferation and integration into the service, specifically policy and guidance. At the risk of saying that the new thing is more special than any of the old things, it seems that the technology is growing so exponentially that the lack of comfort is at the higher levels, the institutional level, with integrating the unmanned or autonomous technologies. The young Marines and sailors are inoculated. They're ready to go. They're ready to implement. And every time we get our handle on something, the new thing is ready to go, but policy has not caught up. Can you maybe speak a little bit to the lack of comfort at the most senior levels or leadership levels that may exist?
I'll talk to the aviation side. I don't think there's a lack of comfort. We fly unmanned, manned systems together every single day at Patuxent River, Maryland, Webster Field, and the outlying field. We're operating a Fire Scout in the fleet with manned systems every single day. So at the operational level, we have that covered, and at the institutional level, we have it covered. I will tell you that we're going to have to continue to work with the FAA, and we do every day. I have a member of my staff that's here. His whole job is to do airspace integration work with the FAA and with, more importantly, with NATO. The ability to fly these assets in airspace in foreign countries is a big deal. And to be very honest with you right now, NATO is a little bit ahead of us in some areas with regard to the cultural challenges that you describe. If the system is operating in accordance with the rules, it's got a transponder and it's able to do either AIS or ADS-B, there's no real problem with it. And so I think that we're getting there. It's like any new thing. I mean, when we went from sailing ships to steamships, those speeds that we were operating at caused challenges, right? This is the same challenge that we're experiencing now. Your point about exponential growth is what's making it kind of a challenge. You're ready to go, and I appreciate that. We want you to go, but we're going to have to, and I think the General Wortman described it. We think we have the policy right, and then when we give it to you, you think of something that we didn't think of. That's what junior officers are supposed to do, right? Your job is to take this piece of kit, break it, and tell us why you broke it, and so we can get it right and make sure that it's effective for you in the future. We're in the same place right now with unmanned.
I might just pick up. I feel absolutely unconstrained by our senior leadership. You know, General Neller is a man with many positive qualities, but he is not patient. Okay, he is driving us because he wants more capability faster. You know, those instincts I think are magnified or aggravated by Secretary Mattis's own impatience. He wants a more lethal force now, and he expects us to deliver it. So we're not constrained by our senior leadership, but I would say that absolutely everything is in play. You know, we live in really amazing times. But a lot of what comes out of the commercial sector only gets us 75 or 80% of the way there. It's got to be integrated with our other systems. We have to think through the techniques and procedures associated with employing it. We got to get it in the hands of our Marines and get feedback from them, so we know how to refine the capability and those techniques and procedures. And it's a lot of learning in stride. You know, if you're somebody that likes linear process and you like clean process, you're going to be very, very uncomfortable. You know, so it's a little bit unstructured in some respects because so much is in play, but we have an imperative from our senior leadership to move quick. And I would just say keep putting pressure on us and keep expecting us to deliver capability at speed, because we're all in.
And I would echo that from the Coast Guard. If you attended the luncheon yesterday afternoon, our Commandant, one of the slides that he showed, front and center, was using a shipboard UAS in support of our counter-drug missions. There is nobody that's pushing harder than our 4-star and our 3-star leadership, saying this is a capability we need to employ in all of our domains, and making sure that you know, someone like in my position is making that a reality. So this may be the one problem set where there is no reluctance across the senior leadership, across the services.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good morning. When we talk about unmanned vehicles, a lot of people talk about the wide range of things you can do with it, and that's one of the things that makes them so exciting, because the sky's the limit. But I was hoping we could focus a little bit on like your near-term wish list. For each of the people that are represented here, or each of the branches, if you had to pick one specific mission or capability that you would like to see routinely performed by unmanned vehicles in the near term, tomorrow, what would those be that would have the greatest benefit for what your branch does?
I'm just gonna focus on this Sea Hunter challenge that we've got right now. I would like an unmanned vessel to stay at sea for 70 days, unattended by a humanoid, not run into something, and be available to execute any mission. But just stay at sea. That's a hard problem in and of itself. So when an unmanned vessel can do that, and not all by itself, but have to operate in concert with other things that are on the sea every single day, then I think we're making some ground, because the unmanned part of it really starts helping. I can't tell you the chuckle that you get when there's a discussion about deploying an unmanned system, and the request for forces that comes, that includes an immeasurable number of humans to go and actually employ the unmanned system. So that doesn't stitch with me. So keep it at sea, operating 70 days, and be available for mission execution.
And I think within the Coast Guard space as well, my Commandant and my Deputy Commandant for Operations have been clear that persistent surveillance in the maritime domain, and really what they're looking for is a land-based UAS capability that we can utilize within the transit zones as well as the maritime boundary areas, really to provide eyes on and complement the surface or aerial assets that we can bring to bear today. We know that technology exists. I think the detect and avoid seam that we have right now within some of those marinized UASs is something that we need to close up. I don't have the luxury of being able to have a flight follow aircraft to monitor a UAS, or we don't also have necessarily the land-based radar that would extend out, west of the Galapagos in the Eastern Pacific. So we've got some technology that we need to continue to employ, but trying to increase the ISR capacity for the Coast Guard is important, really into some of those beyond the littorals as well.
Really hard to boil it down to a single thing, but I'll just tell you, our networks are super important for us. So an element of autonomy that's not necessarily a vehicle, an aerial vehicle or a surface vessel, is just autonomous tools to help us defend our networks. And then autonomous systems, all domains that help us to sense the environment that we're operating in and everything that's going on around us.
Yeah, I will tell you one of the biggest things that is on my mind. I talked about two things. Mission planning is a big one, but what are we doing with all this data? There is a mountain of information that is being generated by a ubiquitous system that's putting full motion video, metadata, some metadata not. How are we fusing that together? How are we turning all this mountain of RF and video, EOIR, and so on, information into knowledge that's actionable at the right time? And so I would tell you that it's great we put all these things out there and we provide all kinds of video and all kinds of RF information, but we're not getting, and we're trying, as much as I would like to see work done in fusion at the PED, and that's the processing, exploitation, and dissemination element on the ground, to provide information that's actionable for the warfighter to create the effects I referred to earlier. And so I would say there's a great need for us to begin to harness what it is we're doing with all that information and make it move quickly.
I just offer that, the one on a tactical level, perhaps, the one area where we're really trying to exploit unmanned systems is in the MCM or mine countermeasure area. Trying to take the man out of the minefield by using UUVs, USVs. We're doing that now out in theater with mine hunting units that are deployed, unmanned, towing AQS-24 sonars. But there's a whole range of potential to use those systems to better identify and neutralize mines while keeping sailors who are currently on MCMs or MHCs out of the minefield. So on a more kind of technical sense, that's certainly an area we're focused on.
Excuse me. Good morning. I'm Phil Shuttler, and I have a question about the other side. Admiral Hahn's discussion of golf clubs and having only 14 is absolutely brilliant, because that's what you have, is what you can take with you, and you choose ahead of time. But the other side of this is really those are not golf clubs, they're spears. Way too loud, sorry. They're spears. And the understanding that the shaft of the spear has to be there before the point can do any work. And the discussions so far have all been about the point of the spear. And I'm sure that you will have some designation for the guys that are really qualified to fight with those weapons. But the question is often that the spear itself deteriorates because you lose the people that know how to fix them and supply them. And so my question is, do you have in place a system of identifying the qualified maintenance folks and the qualified supply folks that can keep those things going?
And we're doing it right now with Triton, with the Fire Scout, with all of the systems that I described earlier. We, in fact, are doing exactly what Admiral Hahn said we should do. It's in the field. These are not FSRs or fleet representatives. These are sailors and Marines that are operating these systems and maintaining them. The thing that's been interesting is the question earlier about how we're getting industry involved. Some of these systems were not optimized like I had when I was a junior officer, that was designed to be maintained properly. It had access doors that made sense so I could put my arm in and so on. Many of these commercial systems weren't designed that way, but yet we have these sailors and Marines who in the field are maintaining these things just through sheer ingenuity, and we're capturing all that, writing that stuff down and creating the maintenance procedures and processes and training those follow-on sailors and Marines based on what we've experienced. So we're in the process of doing that right now on the aviation side.
So I would just say that what you have highlighted is very, very difficult. And the captain from the Expeditionary Warfare School highlighted the imperative of moving quickly. And the technology is moving at lightning speed. The institutions that have to adapt in terms of the manpower policies, the training and education foundation, the sustainment tail, are critically important to our ability to move fast and then to sustain the investment. So we're in an environment where everything is in play, but that environment, at some point has to intersect with pretty sophisticated, complex organizations where we have a recruiting effort, an entry-level training program, advanced training, all of the sustainment facilities. So it is a very, very challenging and demanding time. It starts with the technology, but it affects every element of the organization. And in some respects, that can be a governor on how fast we're able to go and how deep the investment is that we're able to make on some of the opportunities that are available to us. But our senior leaders expect us to be more agile across every element of the organization so that we can meet the challenges that you're talking about, as well as the captain's imperative for incorporating this technology and this capability sooner.
Okay, I think this is our last question.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Greg Garvey. I'm with Indian Head EOD. Being one of the smaller services, it's essential that we go out and look for partners in spiral applications. So my question is to Admiral Ryan specifically, what sort of innovations and initiatives do the Coast Guard have underwater?
Little lean underwater, and recognizing that, we've been using underwater vehicles for decades across the maritime services. We don't have necessarily the right capability or organic capacity right now. I mean, we are mindful of some of the threats that are there. We are partnering with the other services to employ, whether they're underwater detection capabilities or really asking industry likewise from the maritime perspective to build some of those vulnerability assessments and threat conditions into their facility security plans. So at the port level is probably our highest degree of attention. Are we really positioned to make sure that we can assess and potentially in the future deter any potential threats, from a homeland security perspective. So we got some gaps there in the underwater domain. Right now, I'd say we're most mature in the aerial capacity, but an area of opportunity for us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panel members for a great discussion this morning. And thank all of you for the great questions.
That's a little, just very nice to meet you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
They offered me them yesterday too. Yes, you can keep it.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, sure. It's complicated.